Hello everyone, Leah C here, and today I'm here with PIEGUYRULZ, and we're going to be doing a recap on what we just thought of the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc.
Yep. Yeah, you might have heard our thoughts before, but those were like, watch the episode once and then immediately come discuss it. Now we've had time to ruminate. I don't know about you, but I've seen some of these episodes upwards of 5 times.
Oh yeah, I've been watching them on and off in the background, just preparing for things. I've just been watching them a lot, so basically the idea of a video like this is just to give our final thoughts after watching all of them together and in succession of each other, so then that way we're not just basing our thoughts off of one episode, but rather as the whole arc. So that's what this video is going to be about. So we're going to start off with our new thoughts on the episode as a whole. So we're going to start off with Now We're Only Falling Apart. So, did you want to bring up the first talking point for it?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing, it's a small thing, and I can't remember if we brought it up originally, but just, Amethyst has a line about, like, did Rose invent cotton candy? And, I mean, I wouldn't say that. That's kind of, I guess, a part of the story arc is that she didn't invent cotton candy garnet, but it's just kind of like a cute little foreshadow thing.
Yeah, there was a lot of foreshadowing, especially like callbacks in the later episodes, but that was a cute detail that they added in that I really liked.
But I guess the big thing, the first thing I wanted to bring up is that after, like, careful examination, dude, I really enjoyed the fight between Ruby and Sapphire at the beginning. I think it is very cleverly written because if you pay attention, if you don't pay attention, it's like, okay, these characters are fighting, they don't love each other, or, you know, they're like, I hate you, whatever. But if you actually pay attention, if you actually look at the dialogue, Sapphire isn't mad at Ruby. She's not once does she say anything really specifically to hurt Ruby. The only thing that happens is she says that she's upset because she should have known about Rose. She should have looked into Rose. She's the one that's always supposed to be, you know, the more thoughtful one. She's supposed to be the one that can see the future. And she's upset with herself for not knowing that. And she says to Ruby, you never know what's going on. And I'm sure to Ruby that was hurtful. And, you know, yeah, of course, if someone that you love says that to you, that's really insulting. But I think she's more upset that, like, her part in their partnership, she let Ruby down. I think that's kind of more of the part of that. And I don't know, I really love how that little spat kind of played out.
I agree, and I see it the same way too, because it seems like not only is she mad that she let Ruby down, but I think she also feels like she let the crystal gems down too, not just Ruby. So and the reason why this is also so impactful and it's such a great argument is because this is something that Garnet has been struggling with for a long time, for not being able to see things, and I think that this was really just the breaking point for her, because really the future vision, I didn't even mean to make that pun, but
Come on, we're not on that episode.
Oh my gosh. But yeah, so I think that this was just the point of no return for her, was that this was something so huge and impactful that she did not predict, and the future vision really does fall down to Sapphire, because that's not an ability that Ruby has. Garnet has the future vision ability because of Sapphire, so ultimately she feels like it falls on her, and that's why I think she was so upset about it. And like you said, she wasn't upset with Ruby. I think she was more so upset with the situation, and she feels like she failed not only Ruby but the crystal gems too.
And I think even, I mean, I called it that, but even calling it like a fight between the two is still just kind of like not even entirely accurate to what happened. It was just kind of a high emotional moment, and Sapphire just kind of really needed to go and cry, basically.
Yeah, which is definitely not something that I blame her for. And I think Ruby was she was hurt by the Rose stuff, and then she was hurt by what Sapphire said, even though it wasn't intentionally hurtful, and that's why she ran off. So,
I mean, not to belabor the point, but if you compare their dialogue to Stephen and Connie's dialogue in Dewey Wins, you know, one couple actually has like a good misunderstanding. Not even misunderstanding, but just kind of a good, I'm feeling one thing, you're feeling another, and it's just kind of leading us to break apart at the moment. The other one is like, hey, I don't want to listen to you talk for 1 minute after coming home from an intergalactic adventure. Bye-bye, I'm going to take your lion. No, but and then the other cool thing about this is that Ruby is the one that's calm. We've never seen that.
Nope.
Every time they've kind of split apart, from seeing her in Mindful Education to Keystone Motel to the first time we meet Ruby and Sapphire in Jailbreak, Ruby is always the one that's like, oh, I gotta do this, I gotta do that, I gotta do this. And here Ruby's like, can't we just talk this out? Like that, I thought that was so cool.
Exactly. I liked that a lot too, because the first time I watched it through, I immediately saw this as they're continuing the character development that happened from Keystone Motel, because Keystone Motel was very much Sapphire saying that they needed to think and talk about it, and like it was okay to be upset and everything, but they needed to communicate with each other. And I think in this episode, Ruby was really coming through and trying to show that, okay, I'm trying to apply what Sapphire has told me back from when Pearl deceived us, so now this is like the same situation, except Rose deceived us on a much grander scale, so I'm trying to apply the knowledge that Sapphire gave me into this situation. And I think she was trying to do that to be the more calm one, because she didn't want it to get out of hand like it did with Keystone Motel, and it just didn't work for her in this case. But I do think it was nice to continue that character development over until this episode.
Another like little thing, and this is at the end of the episode, but while we're on Ruby and Sapphire, I love the note at the end, how it says Sapphy and then R-E written underneath it, because like it's such a subtle touch, but Ruby's nickname for Sapphire is Sapphy, and so she obviously wrote Sapphy as like, you know, whatever, and then decided that was too informal or too like cutesy for what was going on, and then added the little R-E.
Yeah, I know. I saw that in a post after the episode aired, and it's like it pulls at your heartstrings. It's very it's just a very cute and sad detail. And then somebody else also pointed out at the end of the letter, she had started writing something and then she scribbled it out, and they thought she was going to write her nickname that Sapphire had for her, but she decided just to write Ruby. So it's just a really sad but like really heart-wrenching touch that they added, and I think that definitely it was comedic at the same time, but if you look further into it, it also had a very sad connotation to it.
Do you want to bring up the next point?
Well, I was just gonna say, I do think that this is the second best paced episode of the arc. I do think that Reunited, yes, thank you. I do think that Reunited was the best paced one, but this is definitely when I would say it might be on par with Reunited as far as the pacing goes, because I don't feel like anything's too fast paced. I feel like everything's focused on the right amount. I feel like even though we don't really get to see much of what Sapphire's feeling about the situation, I don't really feel like we need to see a whole bunch of what she's feeling, because we kind of already get a gist of it from what she says. They clip back to her during Rose's backstory, so we know how she feels, and I think it just spends the correct amount of time on both things, both Rose's backstory with Pearl and also with Sapphire's emotions on the situation. So I really liked how they balanced that out.
I agree. I mean, like you could say that a bunch of the, I guess, like more fillery episodes are paced fine, and they are. Pacing isn't always a big problem on Steven Universe. It's just usually more a problem with these kind of like lore heavy, story heavy, big episodes. And in terms of those big episodes, yeah, this one, it just gets everything that it needs to get in there. I mean, you have moments from Pearl, you have moments from Sapphire, moments from Ruby. I mean, Amethyst gets like a line or two in there. You see some of Steven's reaction, and that's not even getting into what the story of the episode even is. Like,
no,
so
we
good.
got like everything. We got a little bit of everything, and then it also focused on the story the way that it should have, and it didn't feel rushed. Like, it just didn't. To me, it felt like it was a much longer episode than what it actually was. And for them to make it feel that way when it's still the 11-minute block episode, I think was very interesting. Because I remember when I watched it, I thought I had watched like a 20-minute special, when really it was only 11 minutes long. There was just so much that happened in the episode, but it didn't feel rushed at all.
I think we said that in the discussion. I think you were like, "Oh no, it's probably like a 13-minute episode," and I'm like,
"Yeah,
really? Yeah?
we did
but
say that in the
like
discussion."
It
it
feel
did.
Like it.
It felt like it was longer because it felt like it went way past the 11-minute mark when it didn't. It was, I think, almost exactly 11 minutes. So,
and like, there's always more we could have seen. Like, sure, would I have liked to have seen more of Pink and Rose, or Pink and Rose, Pink and Pearl hanging out? Absolutely, but like, wasn't needed for the story they were trying to tell here. And
no.
there's always room for more flashback type stuff in the future. Like, by no means do I think are they done with showing us Pink Diamond.
No, and I also don't think that we're even close to being done with Pearl's backstory either. So, because we still need to find out who she belonged to and who gave her Pink. So,
that's a good point.
Exactly. So I don't think we're done with any of the Pink and the Pink Diamond and Pearl flashbacks. I still think we have a lot more of that to see. So, I mean, I'm definitely looking forward to it, and I think that we're going to be getting more of them just hanging out. But I think this was just to show just the general story of how she came to change, because the major point of this video was to completely debunk any bad feelings people had about Rose, and any misconceptions people had about Rose from the A Single Pale Rose reveal.
Right.
That's what the point of this episode was.
Because ultimately, you could, before we had this information, you could spin Rose as like, you know, she was basically fighting an army against herself, and she made the zoo to torture humans. Like, you could spin it any number of ways you wanted, just because we didn't have the pieces. And so this episode does give kind of necessary pieces to give more context into her character.
Exactly, and that's why this episode was as important as it was. And I know that we mentioned this in the last video, but it seems like A Single Pale Rose and this episode needed to be put together in order for it to be as much of an experience as it was, because this just seems like it should have been a part of that episode.
It's tough because I think this episode is also a really good episode to begin the week and to begin this 5-episode story. But at the same time, it is clearly like the other piece of A Single Pale Rose. I mean, they're two sides of the same story. Like, Can't Go Back is connected, but honestly, Can't Go Back just kind of teases it and prompts it. Even if you didn't have Steven like having his dream and Can't Go Back, he still had a lot of pieces to put together about Pink Diamond and about Rose and about things that even if we didn't have that episode, he still could have asked Pearl, like, hey, do you know anything about this? Not that I'm talking badly on Can't Go Back, but I do think that Single Pale Rose and Now We're Only Falling Apart are the two-parter in that.
Well, that, and also if you look at Can't Go Back and then the beginning of A Single Pale Rose, the Single Pale Rose has a recap, so it almost seems like that was meant to be a little bit after Can't Go Back, and it seems like Can't Go Back was meant to be a cliffhanger episode, at least in my opinion, because usually they don't include big recaps like that in the front of the episode unless it's been a long time or anticipated long time for an episode to come back. So
even then they still don't.
This is true. But I feel like they could have A Single Pale Rose could have been aired at the same time as these episodes. But I mean, I guess I understand why they didn't, because the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc, this arc was completely different than the Single Pale Rose. The Single Pale Rose was part of the Who Shattered Pink Diamond arc, and this is very much the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc, so.
Yeah. So, like, the biggest, like, what's crazy is that I think this episode has actually a better twist and a bigger twist and a more important and interesting twist than in A Single Pale Rose. I think the idea that it wasn't Rose, that it was ultimately Garnet and Pearl, those were the people that made the Crystal Gems. They're the ones that made the war. They're the ones that did pretty much everything. Rose was just kind of the mascot of anything.
Basically, yeah. And I just think it's definitely... What I really like about the episode, too, is they don't realize either. This is like a reveal to them as well. Like with Pearl knew about Rose being Pink Diamond, so that wasn't a surprise to her. But the revelation that Rose was following all of us, we were the ones who started the rebellion, even if Rose was the one who was the face of it or whatever. We are the ones who led it. And they all realized that at the same time. So I just think that it's as much as a reveal to the characters as it is to us, and I really like that about it.
So then I guess the last big thing that I wanted to talk about is there's kind of rumblings that this episode romanticizes Rose, and I can kind of see like where people might think that, but I really disagree, because this episode more than anything was just about humanizing her. Just showing what she was like on a day-to-day basis, what it was like with Pearl hanging out with her. Like, that's really it, we never saw that. We saw Greg hanging out with Rose, but we never saw Pink. Like,
yeah, I think really all it was showing was that she was a person. She had things that she wanted to have to do fun. She had wants and needs. Like, she looked bored as a diamond. It showed that she wasn't really respected as a diamond. I think it was really just trying to show that Rose isn't this perfect being that you're supposed to like put on a pedestal. She's a human character. She has her flaws. She has her good points. I don't think it was trying to romanticize her at all. It was just showing that, look, Rose is a person too. She's not really above anybody.
And it's showing that like the most harsh things that people believe about rose quartz aren't true. Like, because yeah, I mean, if Rose made the zoo, that and just kind of kept humans there knowingly, that's kind of awful. Like,
yeah.
I think that there's, you know, I've said it before, but I do think that on some level, Rose still has to be at least somewhat likable, because she's still such an important part of the show that if you were to make her just this, like, I don't know, like unlikable monster, a lot of the earlier episodes would kind of be weird in context.
Yeah.
But like, I think that this episode, like, even within the episode, first of all, it's being told by Pearl, who, I don't know if you know this about Pearl, but she likes Rose. So she
likes is an understatement.
she might, like, you know, bump up the story and make Pink look a little nicer ordinarily, you know, narrator-wise.
I'm sure she probably did too.
But even
unintentionally or not.
Even at the end of the episode, Pearl, like, is like, Rose was selfish. Like, she has the realization herself, even in an episode that is very much Rose positive. I'll say it's that, definitely. You know, we still have just the truth is that she was selfish in some ways.
Exactly, and I think part of this arc was to debunk the people who are saying she's awful, like the worst person ever, but it's also to debunk the people who are saying, oh no, she was the best person in the whole world. Like, she wasn't either of those things, and it started debunking it in this episode and then continued over into What's Your Problem? I mean, it was basically the theme of the arc, I would say, too, that Rose isn't a horrible person, but she's not like a great person either. So I definitely think that was the point that they were trying to get across, and having Pearl, especially over everyone, having Pearl recognize that Rose was being selfish is a key point, because Pearl is the one who will always stick up for her and always speak the best of, like, highly of her regardless. But now we see her even stepping back a little bit and saying maybe she wasn't as great as I think she was.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that was also like one of my favorite parts of the episode, because I've been waiting for Pearl to look critically at Rose for a very long time, and I know I said this in our first discussion on this, which was over on your channel, but I just really like how this is a very integral part to her character development, is realizing that this person who she idolizes and looks up to as much as she does isn't as great as she thinks. Like, she's not bad by any means, but she's not as great as she could be. We'll just put it that way.
I mean, it's unhealthy for all the gems. I mean, most especially Pearl, but all the gems, the way they looked up to Rose towards the beginning of the series, it's just like, I mean, Rose did a lot for them, sure, but they act as if Rose being gone is the end of everything. That is the way they act.
And honestly, that's been one of the biggest problems for them, and one of the biggest hindering things that has happened to them, is that they're so focused on what Rose would do, and they're so focused on living up to Rose's expectations that they're not functioning as a team properly because of that. So, like, that's such a huge problem, and I'm glad that they're finally starting to move past that.
So yeah, so that's all I have to say about this episode. I think it's really great. I think also they kind of snuck into that Amethyst, not necessarily directly responsible, but her group was like the initial response, or the initial reason why Rose went down. So even Amethyst kind of has a part in inspiring this, even if she really has nothing to do with Rose at this point.
Oh yeah, of course, because she's the one who brought it up. I really love how it ties all the crystal gems in, because Pearl is the one who accidentally started the rebellion in some way. She's also the one that made the persona of Rose. She made her up. She made up the form, and she came up with the idea. But the whole reason why Rose wanted to do it was because she saw the amethysts. So and then Garnet is the reason why she started fighting for the gems and not just for the Earth. So yeah, you're right. It's like all of the gems somehow influenced her. It wasn't just Pearl and Garnet, it was also Amethyst too, which I think is really, really great.
It's just a very powerful, just like part of the show, and it, unlike the whole, like the twist with where Rose is Pink Diamond, where you kind of look back and you're like, even though I do still think it makes sense, it still kind of makes you go, about some things. I think this reveal is it just perfectly fits in with the show. I don't have to question it. I don't need to does this contradict anything? It's just yeah, here it is. And it's great.
Yeah, I don't really have any problems with that episode. I just think, in general, it's just a really, really positive and solid episode to the series that adds a whole lot onto it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the next episode is What's Your Problem? And we talked about this over on my channel when it first came out. This is another strong episode, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you weren't super hot on it when we talked about it. I mean, you didn't say you didn't like it, but you seemed a little unsure.
Yeah, I was unsure of when I watched it the first time, I think, because I really needed to think about what had happened in the episode. But now that I've watched the whole thing all the way through, the whole bomb all the way through, and I've watched this episode 3 more times, I do like it a lot, and I think that it covered a lot of important keynotes.
Yeah, when looking at this episode, after having seen the episodes that come after it, this is just the most necessary breather that the show has ever needed. With everything that gets packed in. And I mean, the next episode's a little comical and a little slower as well, but it does still have kind of a lot of important pieces going on. But this episode, to let Steven take the front role, Steven and Amethyst, was so necessary, because Steven doesn't get a chance to tell us how he feels about anything at any other point. I mean, he sings about it in Reunited, and he has a reaction to the things going on in the last episode, but to have a character come out and point blank ask him hey, Steven, how do you feel about this? I thought that was just it's such a small moment, but it's such a big moment,
It is, because this is the first time that any of them have done that for him. If this is something that has been a long time coming since he started really dealing heavily with gem stuff, and since he became I mean, he's always been a crystal gem, I guess, but since the gems have really started seeing him as an integral team member for the crystal gems, this is something that's needed to come that I think is long overdue. And that's not a problem on the show. I'm not critiquing it, saying that it's a bad thing or anything, but this is something that the gems should have done for him a very, very long time ago, so that we're finally getting it now. And I think that it's done so well, and it makes sense for Amethyst to be the one to do it too.
Yes. And it also I mean, for a while, the gems have kind of respected Steven more and looked at him more like an equal. But even as late as Your Mother and Mine, when Steven kind of brings up hey, I've heard these things about my mom. Are you sure this is true? Garnet still dismisses him. She completely dismisses what he has to say on the matter, because she's so certain that Rose is pure and honest and good. And so it's cool to see a crystal gem, most surprisingly, Amethyst, actually take his opinion, take what he says at just super high value.
Yeah, and she's really focused on finding out how he feels too. And the other part that I really liked about it as well, adding on to that, was how she really wants to talk about how she feels, like she's done in the past, and all the other crystal gems are doing. They really want to talk about how they're feeling, because they're hurt. It doesn't feel good that they were lied to for this long and that they were deceived. Of course it doesn't feel good, and of course they need to talk about it, but at the same time, Steven's just a kid. And this is a lot to deal on him based on adult characters. Basically, they're adults.
Amethyst says, I'll deal with this. You shouldn't have to deal with these adult problems. Or she says something like that, indicating that she's an adult too. That's kind of explicitly said that Steven is still a kid, and this is still just crazy information for him to process.
Exactly, and just in general, even if he wasn't a kid, nobody's taking his feelings into consideration, and not to say that it's not his problem, because obviously it does affect him to some degree, but at the same time, he shouldn't need to deal with everybody's problems 24/7, and it shouldn't be as planted on him as much as it is. And it's just nice that somebody's finally taking into consideration that maybe we should start also helping him with his problems and not let our problems completely dissuade us from talking about his. I love the conversation that they had in the episode. I love how they finally took the time, Amethyst specifically took the time to try and calm Steven down after that big thing happened, and just see what his general feelings were on it, regardless of how she was feeling.
And I like that the conflict in this episode is Amethyst wants to talk about her issues, but she doesn't she's trying not to, not because she's like edgy Amethyst, oh, you wouldn't understand, Steven, but because she doesn't want to be another character that puts all the weight on him, who's searching for Ruby, because it ain't Sapphire,
Nope.
it ain't Pearl, it's Steven that has to do this. Like,
Yep.
so I love that the conflict, it is ultimately one of those, like, well, the conflict is resolved when the characters just kind of talk to each other, but, like, it's understandable. Well. Yes, it's understandable why Amethyst tries to fight that urge, because but ultimately in talking about her issues with it, she helps Steven, like, because they both kind of have similar feelings, because neither of them were around for the war, even if Amethyst did know Rose for did know Rose when Steven didn't.
Exactly. And it's interesting to see what their dynamic is too when they're talking about it with each other, because I think Amethyst's main fear was that she doesn't want to be somebody who drags Steven down when she talks about her problems, because she's done it in the past, like on the Run. That was one of the episodes that she's done it in, and I just feel like she sees the effect that everybody's having on Steven, and it's a negative one. Like, this kid is tired and he's just traumatized. He needs a break. And I think that Amethyst understands this, and she just doesn't want to be a contributor to it. So that's basically what this whole episode is about. And again, that's like what you said, that's the conflict with her. She wants to talk about it, but she just doesn't want to be another burden on Steven. She wants to help him rather than hurt him, essentially.
And I also like that it does put to the test what Amethyst... So basically that was like a whole thing towards the end of season 3, from Crack the Whip to Earthlings, basically. Or, I mean, I guess even Know Your Fusion, like, where Amethyst kind of gains a little bit more respect for herself and stands up for herself and doesn't look down on herself. And, like, that's totally great that we see this progression, but we didn't really kind of, like, it's nice to see later on down the line here that she was put to the test with this, because this isn't like a life or death situation that Amethyst has to step up for or Steven will die. This is a situation that Amethyst took the initiative to specifically try to cheer Steven up with. She did not have to do any of the things she does in this episode, but she tries to play video games with him because she thinks that'll take his mind off it. She tries to make silly jokes because that'll take his mind off of it. She tries to talk to him about it because she thinks that'll help. She goes out of her way to help him, and I think that's, like, not enough. We don't always focus on, like, what a character makes a choice that, like, they completely don't have to do, versus when they, like, step up in a time that they really do have to do something.
Oh yeah, especially within the past, Amethyst has only really done things when she has to have done them, especially when it comes to things with her gem duties. And it's just really nice to see her actually, like you said, she's going out of her way to do something that isn't life or death. She just wants to do it because she cares about Steven, and I really like that she's done this, and that's a lot of character development on her end.
And, like, I love at the end when Steven says you're the most mature crystal gem, because I think all too often maturity is kind of tied to, like, I'm gonna be a super boring adult, I'm gonna put on a suit and tie and go off and be responsible. Like, maturity doesn't have to be that specifically. Maturity is just knowing how to handle situations, knowing how to, like, respect other people and treat situations with care. I think really that's what maturity is. And so it's great to see a character who is ultimately as goofy as in the very next episode. She's a horse for the episode. Like, that's how goofy she is, and she doesn't change that, but she is still mature because she has that, like, emotional maturity in this episode.
Yeah, which is important, and like you said, overlooked. Like, you don't have to be working in an office and not watching cartoons when you're an adult to be mature. You could still be an adult that dresses up in cosplay and goes to cons and everything, and you could still be mature that way, but it's just, that's not something that's really ever talked about, and I'm glad that they kind of put that message across, that you can still be who you are, even if that's goofy, while being mature. You don't have to be, like, let's say Pearl, where she's kind of uptight. Like, she isn't as much anymore, but, like, in the earlier seasons, you would say she's the most mature because she's uptight and everything, but that's not what the show's trying to show you, that, you could still be goofy and everything and still be mature, which is an awesome message.
And ultimately, Amethyst tries to use her goofiness for good, to cheer Steven up. It's not let me distract you from something you have to be doing. I mean, even though she is kind of doing that, it's for Steven's benefit, not because she's doing it because she wants to do it.
Exactly, which is just really good. Really good character development for her in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Can we talk about the pizza scene?
Yeah.
So when Amethyst finally kind of comes out with it, because in the beginning of the episode, we don't really know what she's up to. Like, it seemed a little weird that she was just like, hey, goof off with me, Steven. Up until that point in the episode, it was just kind of like, all right, we're going to get a goofy episode to just kind of, for the fans to kind of have a relief from all of this high drama. But then when we get to that point, it changes. And I love it because it's not dramatic. It's not like, Steven's on the edge of a cliff and Amethyst is standing over and is like, Steven, how do you feel? Like, it's not. Yeah. Oh, goodness. No, but it's not anything super dramatic. It's not. They don't try to play it up as anything other than just a conversation. And I think that's what makes it cool, is because it's explicitly not cool, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, it does make sense because a lot of times when you resolve issues, they just kind of happen. Like, it's not like you're in a car chase scene when you're talking about something important with somebody and all of a sudden, like, it happens with explosions in the background. Because that's not how everything is solved in real life. A lot of times it's just, you just need to talk to somebody and that's all it comes down to it. You don't need to do something big to change something or to, ask if somebody's okay or for something big to happen. Sometimes it happens subtly, which is exactly what this episode went for, and I think it pulled off really well.
Mm-hmm. And then I also like, for like as little as is visually going on in that scene, at a certain point, Steven like goes to pick up his pizza, and the pizza falls right when she's like, how do you feel? And he's like, this is just, and then the pizza falls, and then it's just kind of like, it is a mess. Like, I think that's kind of what Steven feels about it. It's just that it's this mess. And then in the next line, when he talks about how she was good and bad and bad and good, he just ties the mess up in a little napkin. And I feel like that's like a nice little kind of metaphor that Steven is doing what Pearl kind of did and compartmentalizing it. He's talking about it, but he's not really talking about it.
Yeah, he's just talking about like the general subject of, yeah, okay, I'm acknowledging that this happened, but I'm not really going to talk about it extensively. He
doesn't make any hard cut judgment calls on her.
No.
He's just like, good, she's good and bad. Like, and while that's what I think too, I think that there is some other feelings. I mean, we saw it in Storm in the Room that Steven has really deep conflicting emotions about his mom, even before he knew she was Pink Diamond. And I think that there is something that Steven, eventually that should come out. Some more feelings, I guess.
I feel like that's definitely going to come out when he's bonding with one of the other gems, and I feel like this is a good way for Steven and Pearl to bond, because Pearl's realizing her true, like, Rose how she was. She's just starting to realize this without looking at her like she's some godly figure. So I feel like maybe it's going to come out and him talking to Pearl about it, because that's going to be like the perfect character for that to come out with, and that's going to be the perfect bonding experience for them. So I hope that they explore that more, because you can definitely tell from Storm in the Room and from this episode, he does have more feelings that he's not really talking about. I'm just not sure if he's not ready yet, or if he just doesn't know what his feelings are yet.
I mean, or it also might just be that there just is no real answer. I mean, he will never really know his mom.
That's true. And I mean, unless somehow he meets her, but I don't think he's going to. I think it's very much the story of, I need to kind of take up the pieces of parts of what I know about my mom and kind of just try and make my own like persona of what I think she is. So kind of like that type of a thing. And I don't think he's ever going to get a clear feeling, because he's not going to know her. Like you said, he's never going to know her. So how is he supposed to make like a clear statement on her if he doesn't know?
And people are complicated. I'm not saying I want Steven to make some sort of like ultimate judgment call, like my mom was evil, but I do think that
Guilty.
There is, yeah, the second trial of Rose Quartz. But I do think that there is something he needs to get out. And yeah, I used to be in the camp that like at the very end of the series, Steven's gonna meet his mom somehow in like some bubble state or just like something. very briefly. But after this week, I'm not so sure about that. I think I'm kind of in the camp that inside the chest or somewhere there's going to be a note from Rose to him that's just like a final message from Rose.
I feel like in the chest she's communicated through video before. Maybe there's like another video in the chest or something that explains like the situation. Because if you think about it, if Steven didn't figure out how to go into Pearl's gem and Pearl didn't figure out a way to circumvent whatever was put on her, he would never known, and then it would have been lost forever. At least until Steven dies and presumably she comes back. But even then, that's like something that is never going to be covered in something that I don't think anyone wants to think about.
Maybe they'll do a nice tie-in with this little Netflix series called 13 Reasons Why.
No.
Okay. There's gonna be 13 tapes.
No.
And Rose will. Alright, I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh. 13 Reasons Why There Shouldn't Be a Steven Universe spin-off. Really?
I mean, like, okay, so that's a stupid example, but honestly, it might just be that. Like, it would be cool if Rose had like a final message for everyone.
It would be.
Not as in like a final message like, here's why I decided to give up my physical form. Each one of you is responsible. But but more along the lines of like, you know, Pearl, I hope you live a free life. I hope you can find the freedom that, you know, just like something. It's corny, but I could see Steven Universe doing that.
Oh yeah, I feel like that's definitely a way to tie in loose ends too, because I'm sure we're all wondering what Rose would be thinking about this if she was able to see. And I think that since she is such an important, I mean, basically this entire story, everything that's happened has been because of her and because of her decisions. So it would be nice to see what she thinks about what's happening.
Even in a post-mortem way.
Exactly. I just think that it's something that would be a nice way to end this series off, even if it was just like a voice overlay or something, or maybe something that's interesting is like the last episode is showing her like, because it's kind of implied that she has an idea of what's going on inside the gem, and maybe like somehow it ends like that, like her watching the events or something. I don't know.
The show could also pull another like Storm in the Room where it's just kind of like, is Rose really there? Choose to believe what you choose to believe.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, they might do an open-ended ending like that. I could see them doing that. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a solid episode. The last thing about this episode was that I think that this episode was needed a lot in order to tie into Reunited, because in that episode, Steven had the mentality of them relaxing and everything. So I think that ties in to it specifically because he's getting that mindset from Amethyst in this episode. So I think if this episode wasn't here, that episode would make a whole lot less sense if it happened without it. So it's definitely one of the more key episodes, even though it's not, I would say, as memorable. But it's definitely needed. It's a really good, solid episode.
It would have also felt like this whole conflict with Ruby and Sapphire is done to distract from Steven, like actually getting a solid answer on like, well, how does Steven feel, or like even addressing it. And since they have this in here, it doesn't feel like they're avoiding that. It feels like Steven is conflicted and Steven is avoiding that. And that's why the show isn't giving us anything concrete. It's not like the show just glosses over Steven's feelings.
Exactly. There was just a lot of really, really good things that needed to be done in this episode. And I think it made the whole arc a lot better than it would have been without it. So I'm glad that they took this episode as like a side break for it. Okay, so the next episode is the question which we discussed over on your channel. And I know I have a lot more positive feelings on this one than I did the first time we watched it. Like, I didn't dislike it the first time either, but my opinion has changed slightly on it.
I'm just gonna kind of get out just my general opinion before anything else, if you don't mind.
Yep, I don't mind. Go ahead.
So yeah, I like this episode. I don't actually dislike it. I really like the beginning parts. I like the ending, and I like the part where Steven and Ruby are talking at night. I think that all three of those scenes are great. And I just feel like the cowboy and like the let's pretend and let's go wander around the wilderness with silly accents, have a really slow-paced, kind of goofy song in the middle that takes up like 2-3 minutes of the episode. I just feel like it kind of distracts from what could have been a more dramatic episode, a more realistic episode. I just kind of feel like, to me, Ruby just looks like a goofy kid playing pretend. She doesn't look like a fully fledged person that's having like this crisis of identity and relationship. She just kind of seems like a goofy kid. And I mean, you know what? I'm okay with the show taking silly diversions. I just didn't feel like this one really enhanced the drama or the idea of the episode. I felt like it distracted more from that. But I still think it was like totally okay.
Yeah, like, I personally think that Ruby being a goofy cowboy, I think that was on purpose, because, like, I know I said this in our reaction to it, but what I think it was meant to symbolize is that Ruby is a very impulsive person, and she just kind of saw it and she acted on it because she was acting off of being hurt. So she was acting off of her emotions being high, and Ruby's personality and her quirk that has been known throughout the show is that she's unpredictable, and that's why Sapphire loves her so much, because she can't necessarily see what she's doing, and she can predict almost everybody else. I mean, besides Rose and Pearl, but besides that, she can't see what she's doing even when she's looking into her. I mean, and then, like, even when she did see, why would she be a cowboy? Like, even when she did see it, like, she didn't understand how it got to that point. So I do think this episode was very much supposed to come out of nowhere. Ruby acting like someone who she wasn't. Like, she even said that this wasn't who she was later in the episode when she was talking to Steven. So I do think that they were trying to play on, like, Ruby's very impulsive. She just kind of went off and did whatever. And then, like, she admits that, oh, well, I was just kind of acting it, like, I did have fun, but this isn't who I am. So, I mean, personally, in my opinion, I think that the episode was trying to play on, oh yeah, this isn't who Ruby is at all, and this is just completely out of nowhere, because it's essentially what she was trying to do, is she was trying to make herself into somebody who she wasn't and act like she was happy like that when she really wasn't.
And I totally understand it. I think it does make 100% sense. I guess I just wish they pulled it off in a little bit more of an interesting way. But yeah, like the beginning of the episode, I mean, we talked about it quite a bit, but just how cool Greg was with the reveal. Just he reacted in just such a beautiful way, such a different and a nice, like, contrasting way from how everyone else reacted to it.
Oh yeah, like, I definitely think that Greg's reaction, like, as small as it was, and even though it was in the beginning of the episode, I do think that that's one of the better parts of the episode, just because we do get his reaction to it, and that kind of confirms, like, I know there was a lot of theories that since Greg said something about Rose wanting to tell him everything, this confirms that he did not know, and that he's okay with not knowing. Like, Rose fell in love with Greg Universe, not Greg DeMeo, just as Greg fell in love with Rose Quartz and not Pink Diamond. So, like, he's okay with that because he didn't fall in love with the person who she was before. Which I know we talked about this in our other one, but I love that detail, and I love that conversation that they had.
And I love Ruby at the beginning of this episode. I love how it's not, and this is why I love, part of why I just love the conflict of Ruby and Sapphire here, because it isn't a, like, Steven has to get the gems back together, like, you know, Garnet will never exist again. Even though they say that in What's Your Problem at the beginning, Sapphire is like, or Pearl's like, they'll never be Garnet again or something. I feel like that was, like, kind of schmaltzy and, like, antithetical to the rest of it, because the rest of it isn't, like, this big dramatic thing. It's not played up like, Ruby isn't playing it up here like, I never want to see that Sapphire again. She's playing it up as just enjoying her independence, which I think even if you are in a committed, loving relationship, is still something to be celebrated from time to time.
Exactly. It's not healthy to be around one person constantly, especially when you're already on edge as it is. Sometimes you need to have a break, and I like that they brought this out here, and she was happy, like, yeah, I'm alone, I'm taking, she never said that she never wanted to see Sapphire again. That never came out of her mouth. And I don't know, like, I like how she was just kind of cool with being alone for a little bit. She wasn't freaked out about it. She was just kind of, okay, well, it is what it is, I'm gonna make the most of it.
Yeah. And also, we didn't mention it, but this episode was on the 4th of July, and it was about a character that shares one of our country's colors, celebrating her independence.
Yep. Oh my gosh. I know I saw a lot of jokes on Twitter about, oh yeah, we're all celebrating Ruby and Sapphire's engagement by shooting off red and blue fireworks.
Aww.
Which is cute. I don't know. I thought that the episode was cute overall.
I'd agree to that. I would agree. I think it is cute.
I wouldn't say that the song is one of my favorites or even in my top songs for the show. I think it was just kind of there, and it was a cute song. Like, I'm not going to say it was awful, but it's just there.
It was the culmination of a lot of things. So like the song is sung in an accent by an actress who typically doesn't sing. At least I've never seen any work which she's sung, and Ruby's never sung on the show before. It's in like this kind of slow cowboy like genre type. It's just kind of and it's in the middle of the episode. It's just kind of a storm of like like if it was a little shorter, maybe if it wasn't in the accent, maybe I don't know. It's just maybe if it was Steven singing about her, like because I don't know. I'd have a problem hating any song on this show that's not named Big Fat Meanie Zucchini. So I don't hate it, but I do think it was kind of like a lower point in the episode, and it happens like right in the middle.
Yeah, I mean,
it's cute. It's cute.
Yeah, it's cute. It's cute, but the thing is that something cuter happens at the end of the episode, so it's like
yes.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's awful. It's just I'm kind of meh about it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it did fit the theme that they were going for. I think like it was goofy, and Ruby does commit full-heartedly to the cowboy thing, which good for her. She's committing to the cowboy thing even with an accent, even if it's not a very good one. She's committing to it. So I think it was cute. It's just for me personally, that's not the type of style that I like song-wise. And I just don't like slow-paced songs much either. So I think for me, that's more of a personal thing. I know many people who adore the song. It's just I personally don't like it that much.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, look, the thing is, at the end of the day, I really like Ruby. Like, not even necessarily our Ruby, just I like the design of the Rubies. I love the voice. I love just like the temper and the kind of like airheadedness. Like, I find, I mean, as much as you might not think it because of my loathing of Hit the Diamond, I do just really like the Rubies, and just, even if it's not like my ideal episode with Ruby in it, just seeing Ruby interacting with the world is still adorable and still great. Like, I do yeah.
Honestly, I love Ruby too. I think she's either my fourth or my fifth favorite character, but I love her. She's just a really good character overall. All the Rubies are super interesting and have varying personalities. So I like that we got an episode with her in it, and I do think that even though the episode was just kind of meh, and at least in the middle part, I do think that it was a very enjoyable episode overall.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to talk about the ending?
Yeah, so the proposal. I loved the proposal. I thought that was the cutest thing, and the fact that they put like a remix of Stronger Than You in the background, that made it for me. Like, the animation in the scene was really good. The emotions from Ruby and Sapphire was really good. Just the scenery, the part with Amethyst coming up next to Pro and like, I'm a horse. Like, that is still one of my favorite parts of the episode, and just like the looks that they give each other. It's just like, okay, I don't know what's happening here. But it was just, I loved that scene. It was so good.
Yeah, no, I love that, like, because Ruby's all, like, tough Ruby, and she comes over, and then when she says, will you marry me, she just has the most adorable little face. Just, like, I don't know, it's just a nice juxtaposition, and I do wish that I hadn't have been spoiled on this, because I feel like it would have been just a really beautiful way to just tie this arc in, and it still is, it's just, yeah.
I feel like it definitely would have hit a lot harder if Hot Topic hadn't spoiled it for us. Yeah.
Curse you, Hot Topic.
Because I can tell you with utmost certainty, if Steven ended it and it went right with I know something that you can do, marriage wouldn't be the first thing that would have popped into my mind. So I feel like for the people who weren't spoiled, this definitely hit very, very hard, and I think that the episode overall would have hit a lot harder if it wasn't spoiled for them. Mm-hmm. But even still, I still did cry at the proposal. I still think it was a very beautiful and touching scene. I think it was done very well, but I can imagine how much better it would have been if it was not spoiled. Yeah,
I mean, it would have just been a huge surprise, because it's always kind of like, also like, what can they do? Where are Cartoon Network's, like, what will they and won't they allow.
Exactly.
And so it's always just kind of like when you push the envelope and you go further with it, it kind of allows for a little bit more of a surprise, because you don't even know if Cartoon Network wants them to do this or lets them do this, but they did.
Exactly, because when the keyring links came out, that showed them in their wedding attire, because it was like 5 months ago. This happened a very, very long time ago that this got leaked. I held a poll on my channel, like I hold after all my videos, and I had asked, do you guys think that this is going to be an actual thing that happens, or do you think it's just a PR move? And an overwhelming amount of people said that it was just a PR move. Like, I think it was like 10% said it was going to be an actual thing that happened, and like 90% said it was PR.
Huh.
So, like, that kind of just proves, at least to me, that even though, like, it wasn't really spoiled by that, but as we were coming up to it, then it got spoiled, because we were kind of realizing that, yes, this is something that's going to happen, but had we not had that spoiler, I don't think anybody would have expected it to happen.
No, especially because, like, the pulling from, I don't know, like, cowboy comics, I don't know how often a marriage happened in those. Like, sure, the guy was, like, pining for his sweetheart or whatever, but, like, I don't know. I don't know how many cowboy comics end in marriage.
Oh, I don't know either, mostly because I don't like Wild West stuff, and I don't ever pay attention to it, but, yeah, I don't know. It was just a very cute episode, and we talked about this a lot, but I thought it was a cute episode overall. Had a very nice beginning and a very nice ending. But that's all I really have to say. Oh yeah, Amethyst is a horse.
Sorry, just Amethyst, the most mature crystal gem, everyone.
Yep, running around as a horse for a day, 2 days. She just puts all of her energy into it so she could stay a horse the entire time. She can't do Jasper, but she wanted to be a horse real bad. That's just funny. I don't know. It was just funny episode. It was good. So next episode, Maid of Honor, and we had a lot to talk about this. This one was on my channel. I know we're not going to go as extensively on it, but like Pie Guy and I, let's not go over this again, but Pie Guy and I both had our own separate videos on it on our channels, but we also have the discussion video on my channel. So if you want to know like extensive thoughts about it, you can go to any of those videos. I would suggest going to the ones that we did by ourselves first, though, just because it has more of our thought-over opinions on the episode. But yeah. So did you want to start this one off, or?
Well, I guess I'll just kind of get my bad thoughts out of the way, or not my bad thoughts, but just the things that I gotta say. I'll make it as brief as I can. Just that. When we did the discussion, like, I think I would hope that most people, especially after having seen the episode a few times, can agree that the episode is fast-paced. Now, whether or not you think that's a problem or you think that's a really good thing, that's totally up to everyone. But I think that the episode was fast. And one of the examples I used was that Steven, he writes Bismuth on the card, looks at the temple door, and then there's a... It's like it's a second. It might be less than a second of establishing shot of the bubbles up in the air, and then Steven's holding Bismuth, and then he just lets her free, like, immediately. And my problem with this is not like, how did Steven get to the bubble room? Like, it's not like I needed to see Steven walking there. It's just the establishing shots were quick, and it got right to it. For a show that spends a lot of time with characters talking about their feelings and thinking things over, etc., to have Steven just write Bismuth and then just immediately, literally free Bismuth, like, 3 seconds later, it was fast. And I feel like it's unfortunate, because Bismuth is a character that has got one episode, minor cameos, and now she's back again, and it's almost like the episode just doesn't have that much fanfare about her being back. It's just like, if the wedding didn't happen, would Steven have ever let her free? Like, why was she being kept in the first place? It just kind of raises a lot of questions, and like a big conversation between Steven and Bismuth happens off screen. I don't want to hear about, like, the story of Pink Diamond again for the 80th time, but I do still think that, like, just that happening off screen just doesn't, I don't know, it doesn't do justice to the story. And then there's no recap whatsoever of things that happened 50 episodes ago. Literally, it's 51 episodes since Bismuth, and we don't get like a brief like, okay, so Sapphire at the beginning of the episode mentions all their friends can't be there because they're corrupted. Maybe you could have mentioned Bismuth then to like remind like and Bismuth and Ruby being like, oh well, we can't let her out because of Steven's safety. Even just a line like that would have kind of reminded the audience a little more and set things up a little bit better. And so I do like the episode. I don't actually dislike it. I just feel like it should have been 22 minutes. There should have been maybe some more recap, should have been a little slower paced, maybe less wedding stuff, which I know is cute and I liked it, but maybe not in Bismuth's episode. Or there should have been a part 2, like before this, that kind of sets this sort of thing up. Sorry.
No, it's fine.
I'll stop. I'm done. That's it.
I mean, I agree with some of the stuff that you said. You know that my opinion has changed on the episode because you watched the video that I made about it. I do think that this is definitely an arc for Bismuth that needed 3 episodes. I do still think it either needed 3 episodes or it needed to be a 22-minute special because, like you said, I think everybody can agree that the episode was a little bit rushed, regardless if they thought that that was a problem or if it was just the general feeling of the episode. It did feel rushed. And I do think that there should have been more focus on her. I mean, personally, I think that the episode was paced fine. But I do think it was quick. I do think it was fast-paced. But I do think that they hit everything in this episode that they needed to. My problem is more so that they just didn't have another episode on it. Either beforehand or the 22-minute special. That's what my main problem with it is. After seeing Reunited, I do think that a lot of the wedding preparation stuff was fine to be in the episode. It was more like, again,
if you could have, just if they could have shuffled the episode order around and maybe have What's Your Problem had been the episode with some of the wedding stuff and the Bismuth episode had been more standalone, maybe it could have worked better.
Maybe that would have worked better, because I do think that a lot of the wedding stuff that happened, it did give certain characters spotlights and speaking lines, and it was good, and I don't think it should be cut out necessarily. I just think that there definitely should have been more Bismuth, just because she's a very complex character, and I just don't want her to get not as much screen time as she should be getting. But like I do think that for how much they put in the episode, I do think it was well paced. I think it was well executed for what it was. But again, like, I do think it's a 3-episode thing that needed to be done when it was only 2 episodes long, and that was my main problem with it.
And I will just say that, like, a lot of the stuff in the episode, like, makes sense, but it's just the easiest possible way that these things could have gone. Like, okay, so Bismuth learning about Pink Diamond, her reaction is like, haha, how'd I miss that? Like, the thoughts about the gems, maybe they won't accept Bismuth. They accept her with open arms, and there's no questions asked. There's moral ambiguity about, like, should you shatter a diamond? Like, should you kill someone that is ultimately, like, leading to the deaths of a lot of other people? Is completely sidestepped because, Rose was pink anyway, and in the next episode, Bismuth's like, yeah, let's bubble the diamonds. So I guess that's done. And then, like, Bismuth just knows Steven is the leader based upon, like, 1 or 2 lines. It's not like it doesn't entirely make sense, because it does. It's just, like, you could have thrown more into the works here. It's like, so much could have gone wrong with Bismuth. Bismuth could have reacted in any number of ways to a lot of different things, but she acts in the way that's the easiest for the story to, like, acclimate her to the crystal gems, and it's just kind of like, I don't know, I wanted more, but that's, yeah.
The way that I'm looking at it too is, I don't really think I should be judging it before we get into Bismuth's character arc, because I feel like her arc is far from over. She's really only been in 3 episodes realistically, like,
Very
as
true.
a character. So I just think that maybe I'm gonna wait to judge on how they're handling her character until we've seen more of her, because I do think she never explicitly stated that she thought that shattering a diamond was wrong. She didn't say she thought it was wrong. She just said, I understand why Rose bubbled me, because she was a diamond, so it makes sense. She never said explicitly, like, oh, well, shattering is going to be, like, it's this huge bad thing. Like, she never said that it was bad, so I do think that we're not done exploring that yet, or at least I hope we're not done exploring it yet.
I mean, Reunited does have her line where, like, let's put this diamond in a bubble, which seems to be like some sort of payoff to the whole thing. I don't know. I mean, I don't think you're wrong in like wanting to wait to judge. I think you're absolutely right that they could do, and I'm sure they will do something with this character, but they could do a lot more with her. A lot of my issues could be solved up down the line. It's just like 50 episodes between appearances, and she's a guest actress, and I don't know what the Crewniverse is gonna do with her.
Yeah, I don't either. I just think it's one of those things that I'd rather wait before I get, like yelled at in the comments section type of a thing.
I've already been yelled at. I'm good.
I've been yelled at too, but I just want to wait a little bit before I give, like, any type of solid stance on how her character is being handled, because it could be very well that a lot of the problems are fixed. I mean, look at Reunited. We were both very nervous at it for, like, very different reasons, and it completely blew our expectations out of the water. So I think it's like one of these cases where we're just gonna have to wait and see where it goes.
True, that's very true. You're right. I mean, Bismuth could still raise the issue of, like, why was I kept in the bubble so long, or whatever. There's things that could come up, but let's talk about some of the good stuff in the episode.
I'm trying to think of what I mean. I do like how there was a lot of dialogue between Steven and Bismuth. I think the dialogue that was there was very strong, especially towards the end, where she was talking about, well, they're still being led on by someone, and that someone is you. And, like, she pointed out that he's a leader, and it's good in this episode because then it plays on later in Reunited as well. And it just kind of establishes, like, we as the audience already kind of know Steven as the leader. But this is, like, I think the first time someone's actually referred to Steven, like, to his face as, oh, well, you're the leader. And he's kind of, like, hesitant towards accepting that role at first. But I think he kind of owns it in Reunited, like, okay, well, I'm fine with being a leader, but I'm not going to be the same type of leader that Rose was.
Yeah, I really like the dialogue in the Forge. And I do like Bismuth as a character is really cool and really interesting, and she, like, you got to think about it like this, like, the three other main gems grew up, or watched Steven grow up, and they're like, they're trying to accept him as an equal, they're trying to accept him as this and that, but in some ways Steven is still a kid. But to Bismuth, she doesn't really know the concept of kid, and she didn't watch Steven grow up, so to her, she can be a character that really does see Steven as just another person that she can challenge him on his ideas, he can challenge her on hers, and it's not like this, she's not Steven's mother, or sister, like the other gems basically are. And I think that's really cool, and I think this episode does play with that a little.
Oh yeah, like, she has such a different dynamic with Steven than really any of the gems that Steven has met do. And she just, and the thing about her too is that she was the first one to think critically about Rose, was on the crystal gems. So it's just like, I think Steven is going to have an easier time maybe talking to her about things that happen, because she's going to be a lot more inclined to, like, be like, okay, yeah, well, I agree with you that this is kind of messed up type of a thing. Whereas the other gems, especially like Pearl, if he were to talk to her about that, she might be a little bit more apprehensive to admitting that something that she did was maybe not the best thing. And I think Bismuth, she'll admit, like, oh yeah, well, she shouldn't have done this, or she shouldn't have done that. I think it's going to be an interesting dialogue for them to have in the future, and we get, like, a hold on characters on Bismuth's character too. Like, I mean, yeah, we did see it in her debut episode, but even more so, this just solidifies the type of character that she is, and I love her. Her character is so great.
I have to point out, this is like a thing that's been joked about, but I think this might be the first time we get to see it, especially with Peridot, is that when Garnet unfuses, before Bismuth comes back, it is Pearl and the Munchkins.
Oh my gosh, it is! Now there's another tall gem! Oh, Pearl's gotta be happy.
But it was, like, literally in that one scene, Pearl was the only gem that was tall. Ruby, Sapphire, Peridot, Steven, all of them were the Shorty Squad, and Amethyst, Shorty Squad.
That was such a great scene, too, because she's just standing back there, like, awkwardly with all these small children around her. She's just, like, she looks like she's the only adult there supervising a bunch of, like, Like, this is why Pearl's the most mom character, because she's the only one that looks like a mom 24/7. Now all she needs is mom jeans and a soccer ball next to her. She already has the band from Greg.
Oh goodness. But yeah, that was great. And I mean, I do really like all the little wedding interactions. Like, I mean, it's the first time I get to see Peridot in a while.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great to see how excited Ruby and Sapphire are. Steven has a wedding book that he's been planning, which is like, it's not that it's out of character for Steven, but it makes me wonder, like, what wedding are you talking about, Steven? Is it your wedding? You couldn't have expected this because you didn't know Ruby and Sapphire existed. Like, did you think Pearl was gonna get married? Like, what?
Oh my god, that's impossible.
Oh, no.
her significant other is dead.
Pearl marries the giant portrait of Rose.
Oh my god! Instead of taking it down, they just take it to Pearl's room.
Oh no!
Not the best place for it to be. It's gonna like get destroyed in there, but water damage and all that. Yeah, I don't know, that episode. It's just a really good episode. I think Steven, I think he's just a hopeless romantic, that little kid. Like, even when he's reading the Familiar books, he's just like, I really liked the 50-page description about the wedding cake. And Connie's like, no. And then Connie doesn't like it, but he likes it. It just makes me think, like, how over the top his wedding is gonna be. Because he's just gonna have everything. I mean, I'm sure Connie will have some input, but also she knows Steven very well, to the point where she knows that he's gonna go nuts. He's probably gonna be doing all the planning basically by himself with some input, just because of how he is. He's just a funny character. I love that kid.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all I really had to say about that episode. I mean, obviously we've talked extensively about it on our own channels and also in the discussion video. But that's all I really have to say about it. Did you have anything else?
I mean, we mentioned it in the original discussion, but just seeing Biggs again was really cool. Getting it confirmed that it was Biggs. It did add like a little necessary action to the episode, because otherwise it would have been 100% talky. It's also a cute thing. I really didn't catch it at like the first time, is when Steven tells them to not drop the cans, they're holding the cans at the end of the episode. And Peridot's like, yes, I won. That like completely went over my head the first time I watched, because I'm like, what is she talking about? Like, but yeah, Pearl holds her can like you'd hold a teacup. Like,
it's just it's funny that one, they took that literal, which of course they would. They're aliens, of course they would take it literal.
Well, Steven was pretty adamant about making them hold their cups.
True. This is true, but you think they'd like place it on the table, but nope, they're just like, we're just gonna hold this until he comes back, which could have been anywhere from like an hour to like 3 hours after. I'm just imagining the crystal gems walking around trying to do everything, holding the cups, and then here's what I'm imagining. That's really funny that I wish we saw. I bet you someone tried to go put it down, and Peridot was just like, if you put that down, I'm gonna win. Like,
Peridot's a dirty cheater too, because she was floating with it. She was doing it to float.
She was.
Which is foreshadowing. Foreshadowing.
For the next episode, or?
Yeah, for the next episode, for when she's can Lord Peridot.
I mean, she won. She's the queen of the cans. Why not?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next episode was Reunited, which was over on Pie Guy's channel. We had our discussion on it. And this is definitely the crowning jewel of the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc, at least in my opinion. Oh yeah.
I mean, it was just an hour of us just gushing over how good it was. I don't think I had anything negative to say about it at all. And even now, even after thinking about it, I have about 2 notes on like kind of criticism-y things, and those are pretty minor too.
Yeah, like, even any criticisms that I have on it too, it's just animation errors that I noticed after watching the episode over literally like 20 times, I think. Probably more than that if you count the times that I've watched the fight scene over just by itself. Mm-hmm. I've watched it a lot, and I still can't pick out anything negative that's really noteworthy. Like I said, I've seen like 2 animation errors, but they're not enough for the experience, at least for me, to be diminished at all. So like, it's just a really good episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, like, the thing is that there are things that I've heard people bring up, like criticism-wise about the episode, and I don't even think that they're necessarily wrong or that I don't agree with them. It's just that like the episode does so many things so well. Like there's the opening song, there's the adorable wedding, there's the hilarious jokes and the little character moments, the big surprises, just the insanity of the episode. There's so much going on in any given second of this episode that even if you could say like, okay, well the fight scenes weren't that amazing, or like, you know, the animation wasn't that good, or like if you have any criticism like that, it's just like there's so much to kind of disguise it, and there's so much to I don't know, to boost it up, that even something that's like maybe not like amazing, it feels amazing because everything around it is amazing, you know?
Yeah, and the thing is too is it moves at such a good pace that by the time you have time to reflect on something that happens, another huge thing that you need to think about is happening. So it's just like, in my opinion, the faults in this episode aren't really, they don't do anything bad for the episode, I'll put it that way. I still think that it's an amazing episode. I don't think any of the faults that you could point out in this episode are gonna make it less of an amazing episode. I think that it's very solid. Any criticisms on it, I think are opinion based on, in this case, at least in my, like, I can't, I mean, that's basically all criticism, but
I was about to say, like, I mean,
yeah, it's basically all criticism. I mean, you know what I mean, though. Like, it's just, I don't, usually I agree with the criticisms on the show, but in this case, like, I don't necessarily agree with what people were saying about it. I think it's just a very solid episode.
Mm-hmm. And I want to hear more criticism of the episode too, because I think it is interesting what some people kind of picked out. But anyway, to get actually into it, the one thing that I noticed and that other people noticed is that a big deal is made the first time that Blue's aura power comes out, or the second time the power comes out, how Connie isn't affected by it. It's not even like they make explicitly a big deal about how she can go and fight because she's the only one, or she's the only one fighting that's not affected. But then later in the episode, she is affected in the group shot, and it looks like it was just an animation mistake. But it is also possible that it was intentional, but like, because it seemed to be that like, okay, the aura doesn't affect humans, but then it does. So I don't know if it was a mistake or whatever. It's a very small inconsistency, but it does kind of like, unfortunately, raise this question of, was this intentional or not? And I don't really know.
Yeah, like, I know we talked about this before recording, but I do really feel like it was one of those things where they were given instructions, and this is one of the scenes that was not animated like in Cartoon Network. It was animated in one of the animation studios that they outsource. And I think that they were just given a general instruction, and they kind of took it as everybody in frame as crying, and not Connie. I feel it was very much a mistake, but at the same time, like you said, we have no way of knowing if it was a mistake or if it was intentional, but I'm assuming that it was a mistake because she was able to attack the first time, and that there was a lot of emphasis on that.
And then the other criticism I have, and it's really not about this episode, it's about kind of the rest of the season before it, is just that Steven's opening song is like fantastic, but his kind of whole message about like, let's just have a day where we don't think about the bad things and think about love. It's like, there's a lot of times in season 5 when Steven maybe should be thinking about like Lars being stuck in space, or the fact that the Diamonds seemed pretty interested in coming and back, maybe following Lars, maybe just coming for Steven. They even mentioned coming for the cluster. Like, there's a lot of stuff that Steven could have been worrying about. And yes, he's been under stress, especially with like the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc. But it's just like, it's not like Steven's been in like nonstop fight mode. So this song about like, oh, I just want one day where I could just have a nice, fun, lovely wedding. It's just kind of like, you've had a few nice days, Steven. I mean, Letters to Lars was a pretty chill slice of life few like weeks or months or however long that was.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Like, and we had talked about this before, but in the return, they're really nervous about the gems coming to Earth way before the return even happens. And I do feel like there should have been an episode, but they might have thought that it would have been too repetitive if they included another one, except them this time worrying about the diamonds. But I do think.
Maybe that's why Peridot and the Crystal Gems were fighting the cans and can't go back. That was the training.
That was the training they want us to infer, that's what they were talking about. But I think maybe the song is maybe more to infer, like, everybody else is kind of stressed all the time, not necessarily about the diamonds, but they're always stressed about something, whether it's a bad interaction that they had with another one of their team members, whether it's finding the truth out about Rose. It seems like everybody is having a bad time most of the show.
Right.
And I think maybe that's more so what he was referring to, because especially like they all try to talk. I mean, Pearl especially, like, she tries to start talking about how she's still feeling guilty about Pink Diamond. And I think it's also calling attention that arc with her is not done yet. But at the same time, Steven's just saying, okay, well, let's just not think about that right now. Let's try and be happy instead of letting this consume you, type of a thing.
Right. And that's why I think it's like a minor thing. It's more just that it's not that it doesn't make sense. It's more just that it doesn't line up with I like, how laid back the show can be, especially recently when, if we had an episode where Steven mentions the cluster here for the first time in forever. He mentions Lapis. He didn't really seem all that stressed about Lapis, except for when he was seeing Lapis or when Peridot was upset about it. I don't know. But that's just kind of a small thing. It's just that, it would have been better to, I don't know. If the season had been a little more action-packed, that song would really, really hit. But I still think it's a really good message, really good song, and it makes sense for where the characters are.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's how I feel about it, too. I feel like if you binge the show, maybe not just the arc, it might have a more impact. But I do think that it might be a little bit weird just because he isn't the one who's really stressed in these episodes. It's like everybody else who's stressed. But other than that, I think, obviously, like you said, the song was really, really good. It hit on some key points. It was just a really good, strong song, probably the best one that we've had in a very long time. But yeah, I just think it's good.
Do you have any, you said some animation errors. Do you want to list any of those off?
Okay, so the biggest one that I'm still surprised I haven't seen anyone post is Lion's face disappears and and I know I showed it to you. Maybe you'll post it on Twitter later, but there's this one scene where Lapis is picking them up in the bubble to fling at Blue Diamond. There's actually 2 animation errors here, but the one that I noticed the most is when she's picking them up and there's a close zoom-in shot, Lion's face just isn't there. It's just completely gone, and I guess it's not that noticeable because if you look at it quickly, it might just look like Lion's looking down and you just can't see his face. But the thing is like in the screen before, you could see his face was clearly right where one of Connie's hands was. But in this case, it's just not there at all, and it just kind of looks like a lump in his where his head should be.
He retracted his head into the pocket dimension, obviously.
He's just like, hang on a minute, I gotta go talk to Lars and see if he's gonna be in this episode.
Oh God.
But that was one of them, and then the other one too is also with the hand. When Lapis goes to fling it back, she's near Blue Diamond, and then like the next frame, she's next to the cluster's arm. That was the other animation error that I noticed. But this is after me watching this part over 30 times. So like, of course, you're gonna notice animation errors. It's nothing that ruins or detracts from the experience for me. It's just 2 little things that I noticed that I thought was funny and just worth pointing out, because the thing with Lion's head, that one had me laughing for like 5 minutes, because I was just like, I don't know how they missed this, but it's a really funny thing.
But yeah, Reunited in general, like it is basically the return in Jailbreak on steroids. Like big reveals, actual fighting, like good fighting, handships being destroyed, a nice song, like that feeling of just kind of like dread and that everything's going to change after this. I mean, that was the return in Jailbreak, and this just takes that episode and like a lot of the stuff that episode does and just completely blows it out of the water. Just not like it like copies it or anything, but it just, it's season 5, maybe even like just everything past season 1's equivalent of Jailbreak and the return.
Exactly. And like, it's funny too, because Jailbreak was what made everybody fall in love with the show. It was the action, the lore, the music, and in this case, this episode is essentially the exact same thing. There's the cute moments with social material that it's groundbreaking historically speaking. Same with how Jailbreak was. That's how when most people started watching the show. It has the action, the music, the lore. And so does this episode. So it's just like, it is Jailbreak. It has all of the elements that made everybody fall in love with the show, and it pulls it off perfectly, just like Jailbreak did.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, like, not that I don't like Your Mother, or not Your Mother, Are You My Dad and I Am My Mom. Like, I think those are good episodes, but just as a comparison, like, looking at Reunited versus those two episodes, it's like, it just goes to show just how Reunited just does everything so much better than a lot of the rest of the show. And I'm not even like saying it to knock anything. It's just like, this episode takes stuff that is commonly featured on the show and just elevates it up to such a level that I couldn't have expected them to even reach, to be honest. Like, it blew me away. Like,
I mean, this episode blew me away too. I remember when our note-taking thing was just basically all key smashing. But I mean, it was a really good episode, and I wasn't expecting it to be as good as it was. Like, I still had faith that it was going to be a good episode and that it was going to be interesting, but I also wasn't expecting to receive something that was almost like show finale quality.
Yeah.
Because
that's what it felt like.
Exactly. It felt like it was the end of the show, and I know that there's still a lot more left, but it felt like the show was ending just because of how well it was executed.
Mm-hmm. And I love how something we didn't know is just that it is a 3-act structure. Like, that's what makes a 22-minute episode like this different from when they do 2-parters. Now, I don't actually know if Bismuth or Gem Harvest followed the 3-act either, but I know that this episode does it because the first act is the wedding. The second act ends with them defeating Blue Diamond, and then the third act is all the stuff at the end.
Right.
And, like, that's really cool because when you do a 2-parter, you can't really do it like that. It's either a 2-act or you could give each of the parts a 3-act, but like, it doesn't, I don't know, it's weird. And so to see the show kind of like really justify doing a 22-minute special like this, it's great. And just the way they broke it up, like, I don't know, I was surprised. I thought the wedding was like much less than a third, not just because it felt like everything else, like this, it just felt like so much happened, you know? Yeah.
I mean, and there was a lot that happened. I think it's just that none of it was boring or forced. It all had a lot of interesting things happening. Like, even the wedding, which I know a lot of people main concern was that it was going to be 10 minutes episode for the wedding, and it was just going to be all cutesy stuff, and it wasn't going to have. But the thing is that the wedding was genuinely interesting. It didn't feel like it was dwelled on for too long. I mean, we had this scene with Dewey and Jamie that I think was very good.
Yes, stole the show.
and then we just had like scenes of all the characters interacting, and then it went right into the diamond attack. Like, I think it was done very well. It didn't feel like it was dwelled on, which a lot of the fluffy episodes do feel like.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just a strong episode overall. The only other thing I can think of that I really liked, and I know that we both talked about this, is that the Crystal Gems stay true to being awful heroes. And what I mean by this is that they're not good at their job because they get defeated so easily. Like, even with
Peridot.
Yes.
Peridot.
Peridot gives them the runaround. There's 3 of them, technically 4. I mean, 5 too if you want to count Steven, but it's like, she gives them the runaround for the longest time. They can't even take down a ship that's only being run by 2 gems and 1 prisoner. Like, it's just comical how bad they are at their job, considering they fought a 1,000-year war and they've kept the Earth safe for 5,000 years, and maybe they haven't even kept it safe. Maybe they're just kind of hanging out there and the diamonds haven't done anything. So, you know, and I like how it played true to that, where they didn't even put a scratch on Blue Diamond when they were fighting her. at all. They did not do anything to her. Like, she got the barn thrown on top of her.
They stalled her. They stalled her.
That's all they did. And I love that. I would have been upset if they, like, poofed her or something, because I don't feel like that would have been within their skill set. They're very much, they're trying hard, and I think it's impressive what they can do, but they're by no means good enough to stand up against a diamond, let alone 2 diamonds.
Right. Especially not without Steven. Like, once Steven is out,
they're cracked. Is basically they're done. they're not gonna live that.
Yeah. I mean, another thing that's really nice about Reunited is just that, unlike like Maid of Honor, which doesn't really do much in terms of reminding you of like what happened previously, this episode does a great job of reintroducing ideas like the cluster, Lapis, like where she's been, what, all that sort of thing. The fact that it's likely that the diamonds are going to come. Like, the opening song is very efficient in reminding us of things and bringing up things. And I think it's super important when you have like the cluster who hasn't been mentioned since. I don't know.
Season 3, actually.
Same Old World or something like.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
So I think it's so crucial to bring it up. And I mean, even just in the song, it felt more like it's just a continuity cavalcade than it did like specifically these elements are going to come back, which I thought was like a great way to disguise it, right?
Yeah, because, I mean, if you saw it, you wouldn't think that all of these things were going to happen. Like, even when I saw the callback to the cluster and Lapis, I didn't think they were going to be in the episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, not at all. Because, I mean, like, they do, like, together breakfast, and, like, there's a number of little, apparently the razor was the razor that Garnet gave him in 3 Gems and a Baby when Steven is shaving his one facial hair that is also from an episode.
There was a lot of continuity. Like, if you look back at it, there's so much that I'm sure we haven't even noticed yet. Nobody has noticed yet. There's just a lot of stuff going on in there. That's callbacks to everything that have happened in other episodes, and it's just a very nice way to start and also remind you of things that have happened in the show's past.
Mm-hmm. But I think even more than just kind of like cameos and continuity nods and things like that, the episode does tie up a lot of the ideas and themes presented in both seasons 4 and 5. Lars is like really kind of the big hanging thing, which I mean, I don't blame them for not wanting to include one more element in this. And since it is technically not even the season finale, I totally get it. But aside from that, I mean, like, Lapis comes back. The revelation that Steven is Pink Diamond actually means something here for the story. It's not just like, well, it's going to make the gems all feel sad for a little while and conflicted and whatever. Like, it has a real tangible effect on the story going forward because of this episode. And Connie calls back to their fight. Bismuth has her line about wanting to bubble gems. There's Nanafwa gets to break out the nanophone. Like, these are things that felt like I have a lot of criticisms of season 5, and I'm tempted to do a review of seasons 4 and 5. But I think that this episode really does bring back a lot of elements and ties things up in a neat bow, like in ways I didn't expect.
It does, and it ties up a lot of loose ends, too, because we know that the show is going to be changing after this. I mean, how can it not? You're taking 2 of the biggest threats of the show, and they're not really threats anymore. And I know that we don't want to downplay it, because I'm sure there's still going to be issues with them. But they're obviously not the threat that they were, like, oh, they're gonna come and end the Earth, like they tried doing with the cluster in this episode. They're just not like that anymore. So, like, the dynamics are completely changing, especially now that the truth about Pink Diamond is out there. You can't go back after this. You literally can't.
And Bismuth is here. Lapis and Peridot are here, and their home is destroyed. And, like, even if they rebuild the barn, I have a hunch, or I have a hope that they aren't going to build it out in the countryside again. It is going to be on the beach. Like, there's just a lot of things about this episode that feels like it's the end of an era of Steven Universe, and like hopefully the beginning of a really promising new one. Like, if we don't get a new intro out of this, I'll be sad. I'll be very sad.
I kind of feel like the reason why this last episode wasn't the season finale is because not in the next episode, but the episode after that is going to be when Lapis and Peridot reform, and then the new intro is coming in, because then you have Bismuth to put in the intro, and you have Lapis and Peridot. Plus, you also have the Diamonds, who are not I wouldn't call them crystal gems, but they're they're important to the Steven story at this point.
Well, something we didn't mention at all in our discussion is that the diamonds are stuck there.
Oh yeah, they are. And there's a lot of people are saying that it looks like Pink's ship is still on Earth if you go back to the episode. So they might be going there because there is an episode named Legs from Here to Homeworld. So they're thinking that that's going to be the episode. In order to get back to Homeworld, so they're going to go find the leg ship. I hope they're not going back so soon, though. I hope they do stay with Steven a little bit, because I'm not quite sure that they're going to be entirely convinced. I mean, they know it's Pink, but I mean not convinced as in the planet is worth saving or keeping.
I mean, the good news is that we know that there are communication devices. Like, they could, even if they go back, they can still very much be a part of the story without having Steven to trot back to Homeworld. Or alternatively, Steven could kill some animal and revive it on Homeworld, and there you go, teleportation.
I mean, this also, and I just thought of this, I do think that we're going to be seeing White Diamond at the end of the season, and I think that's going to be the season finale. We're going to get a White Diamond cameo, because what I think is going to happen is, because they're stuck there, and I highly doubt that Pink Diamond's ship is still working after 5,000 something years with no maintenance. I'll be very surprised if it's in working order at all, and if it is, I feel like it's going to need to be repaired. So they might need to contact White Diamond about it, and they might need to ask her to send help to come and get them, because they have no way of getting home.
Oh man, how good would it be? How like satisfying would it be to have basically like a mirror of the message received scene, but with Yellow Diamond and White Diamond?
Oh, that would be great. I hope they do something like that. And then White Diamond is, wouldn't it be great if it's even mirrored even further, where Yellow and Blue are afraid to contact White Diamond?
And then you just get Peridot bouncing around at the back of the video call like, I want to call her a Claude.
It's like, Peridot, I think this is a little bit past what you should be doing. Yellow Diamond, she's fine. She'll just zap you. But White Diamond, I feel like her stare could probably shatter you. So... Yeah.
Just the aura is just a shattering aura. She has the aura of death.
I feel like White Diamond has some type of a mind control aura, but that's my personal thought.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you think about the poor gem from Kindergarten Kid that was in the barn that got like utterly destroyed?
I mean, I feel like that was their way of saying, "Oh, by the way, this gem is dead now."
There was the shattering. Cartoon Network promised it. Bingo bongo.
Oh my gosh, bingo bongo. Yep, we got bingo all right, because the gem got shattered. Oh gosh. Also, bringing up the barn and the part with the house and rebuilding the barn, this also made me think part of the house was destroyed. Here's what I think is going to happen. Since that part of the house was destroyed, they need to rebuild it anyway. What if they just build the barn as an add-on?
Yo, that would be really cool.
Yeah, to the part of the house that's already, I mean, the wall's already knocked down already. They could just add on to it.
Yeah, open concept.
Yeah, and then that way they all live in the same house, because the problem before was that they don't have any, I mean, and rightfully so. The temple house is a very, very small place. It's only meant for Steven to live in it, and Steven only, so of course it's going to be small. But now, and Bismuth can rebuild it. I think maybe a bonding episode will be them trying to build the barn on to the side of the temple, so now they can all live there.
I could see that. That could be really cool. You could bring Greg in too, to be just completely outclassed by Bismuth. Like he comes with a few boards thinking he's just gonna like patch it up, and then Bismuth's got like some like industrial materials. Like, oh, I forged these last night, and
oh yeah, I just made these, just whipped them up, nothing special.
Yeah.
It's made of like molten lava from like the center of the earth or something. She's just like, yeah, this is just, basic stuff. Oh gosh.
And Greg's like, I've got a hammer. Like, and then Bismuth just like busts out her hammer fists, like.
She's like, oh cool, let me help. I feel like she wouldn't even try to one-up him, it just kind of happens.
There's so many good interactions they could have, like going forward with Bismuth, with Lapis, with Peridot. Like there's still so much untapped potential with those I can't really call them new gems, but I guess new back gems that are back.
Yeah, and they don't have an excuse to not include them anymore either. I mean, other than they haven't reformed yet, but I mean, that's only going to be for like 1 or 2 episodes feasibly.
Okay, well, here's the thing. Like, it was nonsense. It was like bogus when they stuck Peridot and Lapis out in the barn in the first place. Like, why they never brought up the idea of bringing the barn closer or building another home. Or like, they seem to have the whole beach. But anyway, it was ridiculous before. But when Lapis's whole arc lately is like, I want to come home to be with people. If they stick her in like the Lunar Sea Spire or somewhere stupid, I will be so upset.
I hope that they're not going in that direction. It seems like they've been leading up to Lapis trying to live with the crystal gems, and this seems like it's going to lead into her having the dialogue with the crystal gems that she needs to have, because obviously she's not okay with them still. And a big part of her not wanting to join the crystal gems was because she doesn't like them. She's called them liars, she's called them traitors before. So, like, she obviously has some issues with them. The only people who she's okay with are Steven and Peridot. That's it. Like, Bismuth, like we said, she's gonna have major problems with Bismuth if she's the same Bismuth that poofed her. She's gonna have major problems with Pearl for putting her in her gem for that long. She's gonna have major problems with Garnet and Amethyst for just being crystal gems and not letting her out. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I hope so, because we never really did get a scene where they apologize or anything. I mean, it's easy to forget, but if you do go back and look at Ocean Gem and Mirror Gem, it just isn't resolved. Like, the question is raised, like, did you guys do this on purpose? And then the answer is, like,
exactly. Yeah, so I do think that it needs to be explored. I'll be very disappointed if they don't at least bring it up, because, I mean, obviously Lapis still thinks about it. In Gem Harvest, she made a joke about how, oh yeah, I was trapped in the mirror by you guys. Like, she made a very passive-aggressive joke, so obviously it still bothers her. So, I mean, I'm gonna be very disappointed if they don't bring it up again. I feel like they're going to, and I do feel like maybe the reason why they've pushed them out for so long is because this season is really where their arcs are going to shine. And I hope so, because they definitely need it at this point.
Maybe Lapis and Bismuth can be like trapped buddies.
Oh, yeah, trapped
Crystal
buddies.
Crystal gems, like, kept them a secret for a long time, and now they're free. And
maybe they can bond over that. I do think there's foreshadowing with Bismuth and Peridot, and I think that Bismuth and Peridot are going to get along really well, and I do think that that's going to cause some issues between Lapis and Peridot. And this is the thing too, like, you watched my critique video, but in the critique video I said that one of the things that they could have done to resolve the issue is to have Peridot bonding with the other crystal gems and have Lapis have a problem with that. And I feel like they're setting that up for Peridot with the other crystal gems, yes, but mainly with Bismuth, because I do think that Bismuth is the same Bismuth that poofed Lapis back in the flashback. So obviously she's going to have a bigger problem with that. And I do think that this is where it's headed, because it seems like Bismuth and Peridot have a very good chemistry with one another.
Actually, I mean, I kind of joked that it wasn't going to be the case, or that it couldn't be the case, but even if it is a different Bismuth that put Lapis in her situation, that could still also raise an interesting story of how Lapis associates our Bismuth with someone who harmed her in the past, but, like, she's completely innocent in all of it, and that could, like, kind of make an interesting dynamic where she's uneasy around her, but, like, understandably, but also not logically.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I do think either way, Peridot being friends with Bismuth is going to raise some issues, whether it be because she was the Bismuth that did it, or because Lapis is just associating her with that Bismuth.
And it could be a great payoff for Room for Ruby, where Lapis didn't trust someone and she ended up being validated for whatever reason. But now she won't trust someone, and she should. But a small thing, just kind of going back to Reunited, is that it's very easily missed, but towards like the middle of the episode, when the aura powers are being used, Amethyst and Pearl ask Steven, like, what are we going to do? Like, they point blank ask Steven like he's the leader. And it's like, yes, like, Garnet is back, but they're now looking to Steven. Like, how awesome is that? It's such a small moment, but it means so much. It's right before Lapis drops the barn.
Yeah, that episode, the callback from the last episode is really good, because Bismuth was talking about, oh yeah, well, you're the leader now. And they don't kind of just, like, have that happen and then just completely, like, brush it off like, okay, yeah, that never happened. They do show that the gems are looking to him for guidance, like as he's their leader. And that is a nice, really little key moment. And that even goes on further in the whole mind space that Steven is in, where I think they trust him to do something, so they're just kind of trying to hold the diamonds off, type of a thing. And it just kind of shows, yeah, and like he gives them the encouragement like a leader would too when he goes through each of them. So it just plays more and more on this, yes, the Steven is a leader type of a thing, and I love that they included that.
I mean, yeah, like just even like Lapis coming back, I understand why some people feel like that was like out of the blue or whatever, but it's just like out of the blue. The thing is, it's just with the way that Steven Universe tells its story, reasonably we weren't going to get a really good episode where it's like Lapis out in space, like thinking about what she's done or meeting Lars or something cool. That would have been cool, but we were never going to get that. So to have Lapis come in and be a hero in like as just a part of just a really good episode where everything around it is good and interesting, like even if it's not the best writing to have her do that, I feel like they sold it really well. Like I do feel like that works. I feel like the cluster being friendly with Steven also makes sense. It works. Surprising, sure, but like not completely out of the blue, not completely I don't think it's bad writing, and I think that is just kind of part of the magic of the episode, is that it does take things that ordinarily I would have raised an eyebrow at, and here it's just like, yeah, it's part of the episode. It's so surprising that it's an episode so surprising that the surprise is just any surprise just fits right into it.
Oh yeah, like I originally, if you look back at my older prediction videos, I was not really happy with the idea of Lapis coming back in this, just because I thought there was going to be too much. But the way that they did it, it was very well done. And in this case, I think, in my opinion, all the twists that they did were very good. I don't think that they were too far out there. I don't think that they were obnoxious in any way. I just think it was done really well. It makes sense. It fits into the story really well. And even though it's surprising, it doesn't really seem like it's not feasible.
Right. And I mean, same thing with Steven's like astral projection type powers. It's an extension on his other powers. I think maybe even you mentioned, or someone mentioned, that like Sadie Killer's song Ghost, like that kind of foreshadows it in a silly way. But like, and reasonably, Steven had to talk to the diamonds somehow, and I would much prefer it be like this interesting psychic connection thing than like, Steven just like walking up to them and being like, "Hey guys, I'm also Pink Diamond." Like I just can't imagine it. I can't imagine that ever working well if they had just straightforwardly done something like that. It only works because of the magical element, I think. Otherwise, it would have been too easy.
Exactly. Like it wouldn't have worked, because even if, let's say, they're like, okay, yeah, let's sit down and talk, which I think would be completely out of character for both of them, by the way. It wouldn't work because they don't have any proof that they can show. So to have like an aura that they recognize as Pink Diamonds, I think was the best way that they could have possibly done this.
And Steven tries that. Steven tries to tell Blue Diamond, and Blue Diamond just like bops him. Like, nope. I don't think so.
Yeet. This diamond empty. Yeet.
Yeah, and I mean, and like the aura powers, I believe the zoo might have been the first, but that went back a while. That wasn't, Steven having them is surprising, but since the other diamonds have them, and Blue Diamonds we've known about for a while, it's like, even though the whole idea of like, I don't know, just the scene is like a lot of things being thrown at you really fast, it's all extensions on things that did happen in the show and were previously established. And so because it's like it has just enough connection with those other things, it doesn't feel like bad writing. It feels natural.
Exactly. The whole episode felt natural. All the conflicts felt natural. I just think it was very solid.
Absolutely.
But that's, I mean, we went on and on about Reunited in the discussion over on your channel. I don't really think that there's anything else that we haven't gone over that I can think of talking about. I mean,
there's like a million minute details, but if it's like, if we spent the time to do that, you might as well just watch the episode.
Oh yeah, basically. So thoughts on the week as a whole and just the arc. How was like your general feelings about it?
I mean, I've said it before, but just I like every episode in this arc. Some a lot more than others. Like Reunited, Now We're Only Falling Apart, both of those episodes are like top 10 level episodes. Like these are up there. And then What's Your Problem is also an episode that's really, really good too, especially for the small scale thing that it sets out to do. Just really good and really important. And then the other two episodes are fine. The week is interesting. Like I feel like the Garnet thing was a very interesting through line, because they could have just had it where it was like everyone reacts to Pink Diamond, because ultimately that is what happens. Everyone reacts to the reveal, from the diamonds in the last episode to Bismuth to Ruby and Sapphire. Like everyone reacts except for Peridot. But like I think that having the wedding, having them split up and all of that was a really neat through line. And every step of the way, even if I wasn't crazy about like some of the things that happen in Ruby Rider, every step of the way I feel like that conflict, that not quite fight between the two characters and their reunion was all just beautifully told. And I think it ties the week together in a really cohesive, nice theme that other Steven bombs only have because like it's like Steven's off at the zoo for the week, or Steven is it's explicit like what the theme is because it is a story unfolding, whereas this was a lot more thematic and really cool, because I feel like the episodes can still stand very strongly on their own as well. How about you?
Yeah. I mean, I just have really strong feelings about this arc in general. I think it's definitely one of the better paced ones. I still think the best paced one, at least in my opinion, is the Out of This World arc where Greg is kidnapped. That's still my favorite arc, but I would say that this is on par with that, or maybe just as good as it. I do think that standalone wise, the episodes are very, very good, whereas the Out of This World arc, you very much need to watch all of those in succession of each other, because otherwise the whole arc won't make sense. This one you can watch just one episode by itself, and you can go a while without watching the next one. It's not like necessary or anything to watch them, in just the same time frame. I like how all of them led into and had several hints as to what was going to happen in the next episode. And it was continuity, basically. That was what I liked about this arc the most, is there was a lot of continuity in it. And I just think that they were all very good episodes. Obviously, Now We're Only Falling Apart and Reunited are my favorites. I think that those are definitely, like you said, top 10 episodes, and they're definitely episodes that I'm going to continue to rewatch. But I think that this arc overall, it was very, very good, and it changes the course of the show, which isn't something that I don't think a lot of arcs really do.
No.
This one is very much the entire show, the direction that it's headed. The feel of the show, I do think, is going to change for better or for worse. I do think it's definitely for better in this case. But yeah, it's a really solid arc.
Yeah, I mean, do you think I could really say just like negatively, or I mean, it's just like I do feel like certain elements were kind of crammed in here when maybe if they had been an episode about Bismuth like before this, or maybe if I don't know, if they had given Sapphire an episode or something, like they could have done a little bit more, or they could have moved something so it didn't feel maybe quite as crammed. But like, I don't know, it's all just like hypothetical stuff. Like what's there is really, really good. Could it have been better? Yeah, of course, everything could have. But just, yeah, I mean that's, yeah. I don't know. I'm really happy with this week, and it's just like, I don't know, that's Steven Universe. Like I'll go through a slump of new episodes where I'm like, oh, okay, well, the show's all right, like whatever. When it airs again, I'll watch it. And then there's episodes and weeks like these where it's just like, this is why I love the show. Like this is a beautiful, beautiful show that's above so much else out there.
I think it's definitely one of the best cartoons out there. I mean, obviously I'm a little biased because it is my favorite cartoon ever, but it's definitely one of the higher end ones out there right now that's really good. And I do think in cases like this, especially since we got to number 2 in trending overall on Twitter, like that's such a huge milestone for a cartoon, for one episode, mind you, not even the show finale to be in trending.
Right, and especially for the views that the show usually gets. It's amazing.
Yeah, like I think it wasn't, I don't even think if it was Reunited or a different one, but they were only a few 100,000 shy from getting a 1 million on the night that it aired, which is crazy if you look at Cartoon Network's usual counters.
Oh yeah.
It's nuts. Like you could look up what the actual number was. It was something like 900,000. It was close to 1 million, to put it that way. It's it shows what the show's about, and it's just this whole arc, I think, just kind of gives the general idea. Like, if you were to watch Reunited, or if you were to watch any of these episodes, I could say with certainty that you could watch it and get a feel for what the show is if you would just watch them stand alone. And I think you could fall in love with it just from watching these. I just think that it was a really good arc overall.
I mean, going back to what you said about it trending, I think a part of that has to do with, this is the first time in a while that the week of episodes weren't posted early online. Like, I mean, I don't even mean like illegally or leaks. I just mean like Cartoon Network had a bad habit of, either intentionally or not, either releasing the whole week of episodes like on the Sunday, or releasing the episodes like a day early than before they air or something. But this is leaks, yes, there were leaks, but the episodes aired and everyone got to be on board with watching them at the same time, instead of like, well, I streamed it a day earlier, or I caught it when Cartoon Network had it up for like an hour, or the episode got leaked at San Diego Comic-Con, or like they released it and I saw the video up. Like the community got to be reunited.
Woo. Yeah, like that.
Yeah.
And I'm guilty of that. I'll admit I wasn't as excited for Reunited as if I think there would have been no leaks on it, because I was really nervous about the episodes. And I think that the way that the leaks were, and just the overall general mistreatment that Cartoon Network has been treating it, I don't think they've been treating the show very good, at least in my opinion. They could be treating it much, much better than what they are, and I'm not claiming that they're trying to sabotage the show or that they hate it. I just don't think that they're treating it properly, but that's my personal opinion.
I mean, I think that this week is hopefully the start of a turnaround, because I do think not releasing the episodes early, having the great trailers that don't spoil anything, making it a nice week. I mean, even tying in the airing of The Question with Independence Day, like that's no accident. They knew what they were doing there. So there are signs that this Cartoon Network does care and is at least trying to promote it correctly. And maybe it is because the ratings of a lot of their other shows are starting to fall off pretty hard. But like, I think this strategy works so well. If we're all together, we're all tweeting about it, we make such a buzz about the show at once, then that means the people who are kind of casual fans, or the people who have never seen it or whatever, are more likely to see that on Twitter or see that on a YouTube video that has a ton of views and want to go check out the show, versus, I'm tweeting about it when I watched the episode that airs live. You're tweeting about it when you saw the leak a week before. I just feel like their strategy with this week has been pretty much the best strategy that Cartoon Network has had in airing these episodes since maybe like the first Steven Bomb, because back then it was actually like, I don't know, it was cool to have a week of like story-based episodes.
And now that's the only way that they show the show, so it's not really cool anymore. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, we're finally getting new episodes after Cartoon Network has starved us for like 5 months.
But like, I think this was really good to air as a Steven Bomb. I would not have wanted to wait week by week to see this.
Yeah, for this one specifically, I do think that this one needed to be a Steven Bomb, but like the other episodes that they put in bombs, sometimes I question whether or not it's bomb material or if it should just be on a weekly schedule.
Oh, it's bomb material, I'll tell you that. No, you also had a good point about the titles. I mean, I think I mentioned in one of the discussions about how just like cool the titles were this week, but
yeah, so something that's really cool is that the question is a parallel to the answer, which is also another episode that has multiple meanings. So a lot of these episodes with their titles have multiple meanings. The answer has the meaning in Garnet's love was the answer to her question on what she should do about being a fusion between Ruby and Sapphire. And Rose said, well, you're the answer to that. Like, you already are. You don't need to ask me about it. And then it was also an answer to the reason for why the rebellion that Rose was looking for. That was their answer to her starting the rebellion, another one of the answers. And of course, we didn't get that context until What's Your Problem? But like now we know that the answer, that episode title, has multiple meanings to it. And then the other one was also the question. Well, I already said that actually. So, but the
Now We're Only Falling Apart
yes.
is, I mean, it's obviously a very well-known song lyric, but it's and also obviously Garnet literally falls apart. But it's more than that. It's that the whole team is falling apart this week. That no one's on the same page. So it does have that more grander, and it's just a memorable title because of that song lyric.
Yeah, and then also the biggest one that I think personally has the most meaning is that there's Reunited. Reunited has several meanings. It's reunited because this is the first time that all of the gems in Bismuth are back together. It's reunited because Ruby and Sapphire are fusing back to Garnet. It's reunited because Blue Diamond and Yellow Diamond are seeing Pink Diamond again. So, like, there's several different reasons why it's called Reunited. It doesn't have just one meaning, which is cool, too, because when you're speculating just on titles, like, which is a lot of the videos that I make is just speculating on titles, there's several different conclusions that you can come to. Usually there's not just one answer, and especially with these episodes, there's definitely several different conclusions that you can draw from it.
Hang on, you skipped over the best one, which is Maid of Honor.
Okay, which one? I'm trying to look through my notes over here.
Maid of Honor, I mean, okay, so
right,
Reunited...
the one with Bismuth.
Yeah, Reunited does have the most, like, meaning, but Maid of Honor is the best pun, I think. Because Steven wants her to be the Maid of Honor, but, like, she mentions in the episode that she has honor and accepting that the gems don't want her. Like, she's Maid of Honor, and then it's also a play on Maid of Love. Like,
oh, yeah. It has so many plays on it.
And then what's your problem is probably the most obvious, but it's a question that Amethyst is trying to ask Steven, but Steven ends up asking Amethyst because, you know, Amethyst acting weird. Like, it's just... it's such a good... I mean, the show has always been interesting with titles in that they're either, like, hugely misleading or sometimes kind of, like, boring, like one that's just titled The Zoo, you know, or The Trial. But, like, this whole week had some really interesting titles that matched some really interesting episodes.
Yeah, and then the other one, too, that was for the question, it was... Obviously, the question was, will you marry me from Ruby to Sapphire? But also the question was... One, do they want to form Garnet again, which we already knew that the answer was yes to. But two, also, what's the reason that they want to form Garnet for? Do they want to form it for the reason that Rose said, or are they going to move past that, or are they going to form Garnet for a different reason? So that's, like, what the question is. So there's just... The episode titles are just really, really good. They all have multiple meanings in this case, and I just think that they really outdid themselves with that.
You missed out on the best question, which is, how long will Amethyst be a horse?
I'll be surprised if she doesn't do it again in her spare time.
Oh man, I want some BoJack Horseman Amethyst crossover.
No.
Yeah, I want it.
They'd be really awful for each other.
Oh no, I don't want to ship them. I just want.
Oh
some,
no,
fan art.
I didn't mean shipping them.
No.
I didn't mean shipping them. I meant friendship wise.
Okay, yes.
But...
they would feed into each other's worst habits.
Oh good lord, they'd both end up dead somewhere, guaranteed. Like that. This is how BoJack dies.
He survived so many other things, but he can't survive Amethyst.
Nope. Amethyst is just like, okay, instead of thinking and talking about your problems, we're gonna go out and have some fun. And BoJack's version of fun is not healthy by any means.
Oh, goodness.
Oh, good lord. That's like, that would need to be on Netflix under Rated R, because they'd be doing some wild things with most likely drugs.
I don't think
Amethyst would, but...
I just want to see some parodies on YouTube. Come on, YouTube, don't let me down.
Oh my gosh, I'm good. I'm waiting for it now. There's probably going to be someone who does something.
But yeah, I think we've pretty exhaustively talked about this week of episodes.
I think we've almost talked about it for like 2 hours at this point. Yep. Yeah, I mean, do you have any concluding thoughts? Because I don't really have anything else to talk about.
No, I mean, I just want to thank you for doing this, like, for the commitment of recording these every day. That's been just a lot of fun, and I hope the audience has liked it. I hope our personalities bounce well off of each other. I thank you for being courteous when you disagree with me. You know,
it's no problem. It was fun. Thanks for coming on my channel too. It's been a lot of fun, even though it was recording every night and then fighting with YouTube to get it up at a reasonable hour.
Very true.
But yeah, thanks for coming to the channel. It's been a lot of fun.
If you guys want to see us do more like Steven Universe type discussions, let us know.
Yep, because of course there's going to be a lot of the show coming in the future with specials and such like that. But yeah, if you guys want to see our past discussions on the episodes that happen and just our kind of first overall reactions, not like our overall thoughts on this arc, you can go and watch them on the channels. They're probably also going to be in the description and also in the title cards when we start talking about things just in order. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys just enjoyed the Heart of the Crystal Gems arc. It was something really special, and I think just overall very strong and enjoyable. But yeah, alright. See you guys later. Bye.
Bye.